Cleveland's mayor calls it a defining moment in the city's history. Changes to the Cleveland police force are here after a Justice Department report found that the police there had patterns of excessive force and civil rights violations. The city, the Department of Justice, together announced the changes that were coming yesterday. And that means virtually years of court-supervised monitoring of the police department. Other reforms in the 105-page report include commitments to, quote, bias-free policing, new crisis intervention efforts, and changes to officer recruitment and discipline. Again, that's Cleveland, and you've heard the story before. It's happened in other cities. So how will the newly reformed police force in Cleveland be handling its next big test? It involves this boy, Tamir Rice. Police are still under pressure to explain why an officer shot and killed a 12-year-old boy who was playing with a pellet gun. It was a toy. It didn't look like one. I want you to look back at the case and the fact patterns in the shooting of Tamir Rice. I want you to see about the officer and the investigation. Last November, 12-year-old Tamir Rice playing with a pellet gun in a Cleveland park. A witness calls 911, believing that was probably the case.
There was a guy there with a pistol, it's probably fake, but he's like pointing it at everybody.
But that's not what the officers were told as they were dispatched to the scene.
Everybody's tied up on priorities. There's supposed to be a guy sitting on the swings pointing a gun at people.
So police say, with those words in their minds, officers drove up to Rice while telling him to drop the gun and raise his hands. 2 seconds after exiting the car, Officer Timothy Lohman fired the shot that killed the boy. An orange tip on the gun to indicate it was a toy had been removed. Almost 2 years earlier, Officer Lohman resigned from another police force after a supervisor described him having, quote, a pattern of lack of maturity, indiscretion, and not following instructions. Lohman has not spoken publicly during the Rice investigation. His attorney said that the investigation, quote, must not be influenced by outside commentary or news conferences, and that they will, quote, continue to remain silent until the investigation is concluded. A month later, the Cuyahoga Sheriff's Department is asked to take over the investigation into that 12-year-old boy's death. And although the medical examiner determined the 12-year-old boy's death was a homicide, law enforcement is still investigating 5 months later.
While a few more witnesses need to be interviewed and more forensic evidence needs to be collected, a majority of our work is complete.
6 months after his death, Tamir's body was cremated after being held by police for that investigation. The family's patience is wearing thin.
Less than a second, my son is gone, and I want to know how long I got to wait for justice.
And they want their day in court.
Until we do something about the sanctioning of killings of unarmed people of color by the people who are supposed to protect and serve them, the community is going to have no trust that the system is fair.
Rice's family is hoping the system can restore that trust through them. And our Jean Casares joins us live now. You're the perfect guest on this because as an attorney yourself, you get that it's never easy to do these investigations, but people freaked out that it was 6 months long. You just talked to the attorneys for Tamir Rice's family?
I just got off the phone with Walter Madison, who's the attorney for the family. They have no idea at all when this investigation is going to be concluded. But procedurally, here is how it's going to go. Once the findings from the investigation are in, it will then go to prosecutor's office, because it's with law enforcement now. The prosecutor can decide it's justified. And then it's over, finished, done.
Wait, without say, a grand jury or
without
a
probable
grand
cause
jury?
Hearing? Under Ohio law, the discretion with the prosecutor is if they decide that it is a justified killing, it's finished.
One person?
One person.
One prosecutor
Yes.
makes that determination on
Yes.
his or her own.
Yes, and that's the way it can be in some jurisdictions. Alternatively, they would go to a grand jury. And then the grand jury would decide if there's probable cause, and they would return an indictment.
So in this particular case with the officer in question, whether there's going to be any kind of criminal proceeding that comes out of it, there is civil proceeding already in the works and has been for a while.
That's right. But that's impacted also because the investigation is not concluded. There's going to be a hearing on Monday for the wrongful death suit. And since they don't have any information, they are going to ask for a stay.
Yeah.
For that to stop at the moment. But I've got something else to tell you about the cremation of Tamir Rice, because it happened just about a week and a half ago. The family has had possession of the body for a long time now, and they were holding it because they wanted to see the investigation results to see if they needed to do their own investigation. But with no conclusions, his mother finally said, I've got to have a proper burial for my son.
We were all under the impression that they did not have access to the body for a very long time.
They've had it for a while.
That's a really new development. All right, Jean, thank you. I appreciate it. Jean Casares reporting for us.